Hey comic book junkies, it's Amy the Frog Queen here, and I'm coming at you with another interview. This one is particularly special because I'll be talking to Tim Pilcher of Humanoids. Tim is the Humanoids liaison from the UK, and today he's going to give us a up-close and personal preview of all their upcoming titles leading up until January 2018. I want to give you a little back history of Humanoids. Humanoids originally began as Metal Hurlant and what we originally known as the Les Humanoids Associés. It was a French publishing house specializing in comics and graphic novels. It was founded in 1974 by Mobius Jean-Pierre Dionnet, Philippe Drouet, and Bernard Farkas. Probably horribly mispronouncing all those names, but I tried my best as an English-speaking Canadian. Of course, this quickly expanded to include a variety of science fiction work. It's so much amazing science fiction work. But eventually, times changed, things changed. And without giving you the entire full back and forth of history, they eventually have Humanoids UK, and they published for North America, which is what we get, guys. And it's amazing that we get to read all these amazing European and French novels, all these different novels in English. I can't be happier. So without further ado from me, I'm just going to introduce you to Tim Pilcher, and he's going to show us a lot of amazing books that we can collect.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, very well. Yourself?
Good. I'm just getting my hair out of the way. I was like, it's falling out of its ponytail. There we go.
Yes.
Awesome.
Right, arrange. Make sure it's not looking... I just suddenly saw that there's bed linen bursting out the cupboard.
It happens.
Yeah. I think I might just end up having to leave that. Hang on a second.
Don't worry.
Bear with.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Nah, it's not going to do it. Ah, well, sod it. Who cares? That's fine.
I've seen much worse things in the background of people's rooms when I do these.
I'm sure.
But yeah, how's your Sunday going?
Yeah, it's a lovely day here. It's very nice and sunny and warm. Been for a walk, had some lunch. Ooh. Just kind of chilling out on a Sunday, really. Excuse me. It's
the opposite of what it looks like here.
Oh, right. Well, what's it like there, then?
It's like winter wonderland. We've got like this much snow. It's still coming down. I don't know why it won't. It's supposed to be spring.
Yeah, blimey. No. We have got spring. Yeah, spring is sprung here. So sorry.
It's not fair. So anyways, today I wanted to just talk about the upcoming Humanoids releases, what we should look forward to. There's a lot of people that watch my channel and read my site, where I also post these videos, who are huge Humanoids fans, of course. And I know that a lot of people aren't always plugging in on the site and checking out the site and looking at the listings like I am. So I just kind of wanted to maybe talk about and highlight the upcoming titles for like the next few months.
Sure, yeah, okay. I mean, what I thought we could do is maybe do a quick run-through of what's come out so far, and then kind of lead into what's coming out later in the year.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, well, so far, what we had in January, does that come up in reverse?
No, it's perfect.
Oh, okay, brilliant, excellent. All right, so that's Ring of the Seven Worlds, which came out in January. We did a hardcover of that quite a few years ago. So this is the more affordable paperback. Big sort of steampunk, manga-esque, kind of Miyazaki style. Have you read that one?
I did. I did a video review of it.
Oh, cool.
And
excellent.
I
missed that.
I said the exact same things about it. I said it's kind of Miyazaki-like. It's very steampunk.
Yeah, that's done very well, and it's a nice kind of for younger ages as well. I think it works for kind of like late teens kind of market. It's very good
for sure.
Then on the bigger scale, I have to move back because it's so huge, is the Fourth Power, which is Juan Jimenez, who is known for Metabarons, probably best known for that, but also Leah Rower, he did with us. And that's a huge, big old tome, that. And that also came out in January. And speeding it up.
I'm looking forward to getting that one, because I haven't got it yet.
I haven't got that one.
I haven't read it yet. So.
Yeah, some of our books, we do the paperbacks and we do the hardbacks, so we try and do different price points for people. But that one, when we do the really big, oversized jobs, they really, do deserve it, because you see the artwork and this really fantastic scale, so you can kind of dive into the art.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I always buy the hardbacks, because I just always do, because I want that kind of quality, But it's nice to have the option, for sure.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that we did recently, is because we realised that not everyone's got huge disposable incomes, so it's it's a chance to give everyone a chance to read the stories at least.
For sure.
So, Whispers in the Walls, that's a great one. Very kind of Guillermo del Toro style. I mean, it's written by Munoz, who co-wrote The Devil's Backbone with del Toro. So it's got that great sort of horror set in an orphanage, kind of spooky stuff about it. So yeah, if you like Pan's Labyrinth, that's kind of perfectly up your street, really. And
I have a video review of coming out of that one as well soon. I just haven't finished it yet.
But it's got a nice twist in the end. Some lovely stuff. This is one of my faves that I really like, Snow Day, which it's a little less complex, but I kind of call it it's like a Fargo the comic. So it's all set in a sort of northern, snowy, midwestern town where there's just this one sheriff who's going up against the local sort of boss of the factory and the mayor, who are a little bit corrupt. And it's a very kind of short, small story, but it's very strong on character and on mood. And it's all in black and white.
Oh, okay.
See? But it's got some really lovely. Let me just see if I can get sort of got some really lovely mood pages here where you've just got sort of fantastic silent pages where you're just setting the tone. And it's written by the same guy, Pierre Wazim, who did Coma. I don't know if you saw Coma.
Right.
But same writer, and a different chap called Oben, who's the artist. But that's one of my faves. I like that, because I'm a huge Fargo fan. So I think it has a very similar tone.
Cool.
Then we had The Metabaron, Book 2, come out, long awaited, by Nico Henryson. Well, obviously by Jerry Frisson and Alejandro Jodorowsky, but Nico doing the artwork chores on that one. And again, doing a really lovely job, as you'd expect in any Metabaron's book.
Oh, it looks awesome.
It's kind of full of that crazy mania that you'd expect from Jodorowsky, and the Metabaron. So it's it's lovely. So that means we're halfway through this new Metabaron series. There'll be 4 in total.
Okay.
And coming out in the big ones. So the next one actually won't be out until beginning of next year.
Okay.
So a little bit of a wait. And that will be by Valentin Shearer, who did the first book. And then the 4th book will be drawn by Esad Ribic, who did Thor and lots of stuff for Marvel. So, yeah, he's going to be doing the last book. So that's cool. Then I'm trying to think what date we're up to there. Right, so that has brought us up to March, last month. And then we also had in last month the paperback version of Sanctum, which is our kind of sort of horror movie, action-adventure type thing that came out. We did that as a hardcover about a year or so ago, so this is now the paperback edition. And later in the year, we're going to be doing the prequel to Sanctum, which is Sanctum Genesis, which gives all the kind of insights to what happened before this story occurred.
Okay.
So that will be coming out. The preview to that will be out in, just having a look now, July. So Sanctum Genesis in July.
That's not too long of a wait at all.
No. So that brings us kind of up to April, which is where we're at now. And what we're starting to do for April is we're doing the Meta Barons in a nice, affordable trade paperback version.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to be doing that for all those people that couldn't afford to kind of splash out a huge pile of cash on the big hardcover. Mm-hmm. So we've broken them into 4 paperbacks. So they're only going to be, let me just see, $14.95.
Oh, wow.
So really good jump on price point. Mm-hmm. Something that if people have been thinking about it and they didn't want to commit to such a big investment, they can just kind of pick that up and dip their toes in and see if they like it.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
We're going to be bringing out those 4 later in the year. Then we've got Savage Highway, which is based on Julia Valanga, who's a sadly late science fiction author, French science fiction author. She was part of the new wave of 1970s kind of science fiction writers in Europe at the time. And she came up with some really interesting ideas and stuff. We did, last year or the year before, we did a thing called Retro World, which was based on one of her books.
Oh,
and
okay.
This is the next one that's based on her book, Savage Highway. And it's, I guess it's the easiest way to describe it is something like The Road meets Mad Max, or Mad Max goes rambling. So there's not really a lot of cars or anything like that, but it is all set on this highway, and it's about an intelligent, strong woman who sets out to rescue her sister, who has been kidnapped by this roaming gang and taken to Paris. And she teams up with this loner guy, Mo, and it's about what happens. And more than anything, it's not just kind of like a story of survival, but it's also a story of kind of relationship, and there's a romance element to it as well. But it's, it's pretty brutal, and it's pretty strong, and sort of, it's quite unforgiving, I think, in places. But it's we're developing that as a potential film as well at the moment.
Oh,
so
okay.
We're going to see. But so it's done by the same guy who did the artwork for Crusades, which was a big book we had out for a while. So it's Zhang Zhao Yu. Sorry, I should say. I'm terrible at pronouncing people's names, so apologies.
Me as well. This is fine.
Then that's also this month. And then the other big one coming out, which I really like, is another huge book I have to come back for, which is a book of Chaos. Now, this is drawn by and partly written by Matteo Lafray, who's done a fair bit of stuff, I think, for Marvel.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was, I think, maybe his first or one of his earliest books.
Okay.
But we've got some. I don't know if you can see any of this, but I'll try and show it up. It's got demons. It's got alternative universes, and it's basically about a guy who goes on this expedition. I mean, you can see on the front there, he goes on this expedition to the Himalayas and discovers this kind of magical place. And he's the only survivor of the expedition. So it's got a very Lovecraft feel about it as well. And he goes back and becomes this big celebrity and writes this book about it all. But then he becomes like a prophet, and this big catalyst disaster happens in New York and changes the whole world. And essentially these kind of demons come across from another dimension, and he's thrown into the middle of this battle, and he's the kind of the prophet. I think in France they actually called it the prophet, But
Okay.
obviously, there's already a comic called Prophet, so we couldn't call it that. But it's a really, really good book. Lovely artwork. Great, adventure story. There's some more lovely artwork.
That looks intense. That demon there looks particularly intense.
Yeah. No, so it's great stuff. So that's out this month.
Oh.
That's it's a fairly pricey book. I mean, that's $39.95. So it's not the kind of the cheapest dollar book, but you get a lot of read in it. It's quite thick and it's nice and big. So it looks lovely on the shelf.
I really like those oversized editions. Are great.
Yeah. No, they're my favourites, I think, as well. So that's April. Coming up next month is Egyptian princesses. Have you read any of Igor Baranko's stuff?
I don't think I have.
He did. He's done 2 books with us, Jihad and Shamanism, and he kind of specialises in sort of magic realism. Sort of, it's kind of like quite spiritual, unusual kind of stories. I mean, he's a really original voice in his storytelling. He doesn't do anything that is kind of mainstream in that sense that what your expectations are. So, I mean, Jihad was all about a future where kind of Russia and Ukraine were battling. And funny, so he's, and it was written quite a few years ago, so he's quite prescient with that. and looking at Russian politics and Russian spirituality, which is really quite interesting. And Shamanism was all set in an alternative future where the Europeans never invaded America, and the Native American tribes managed to kind of turn back time and drive the Europeans out of America, and it's kind of set in that sort of period.
That's cool.
So he does really interesting kind of alternative future things. So again, with this one, he's obviously looking at ancient Egypt, and the other 2 were done in full colour, and this one is all in black and white, and it's got a very interesting art style. It's got a kind of slightly elongated. It's slightly sort of caricature, but it's he does do these kind of fantastic. Let's see if I can find something else. Does fantastic detailed, backgrounds, and you can see all these kind of landscapes and things. And it's really, I learnt a lot editing this book. I have to say, I'm not the world's top Egyptologist or know much about it, but he really packs in the facts. So although it's a really kind of interesting adventure story about 2 sisters who are caught up in a conspiracy to kill their father, who's the pharaoh, it's all based on fact. And he goes off on little sort of magical tangents, and he talks about magic and how it's used and everything. But nearly everything in there is all based on reality and the actual conspiracies that were happening in ancient Egypt and all of this. So it's educational and entertaining.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm a huge Egypt buff, so I'm definitely going to have to check it out.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, if you know anything about Ramesses III and that sort of period, nice. Then... that will be right up your street.
That's awesome.
And, good timing as well, because we've got the new Mummy film coming out in June.
That's right, yes.
So focusing on female mummies rather than, and it's two strong female-centric leads in that, which is always nice.
Definitely.
That's good. And speaking of 2 strong lead characters, we have...
Yeah. I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It was, this is the first time we've done anything with Alejandro that has really been sort of kind of kid-friendly, as it were. I mean, we wouldn't say it's necessarily all ages, but certainly I think sort of, 10, 11, 12 upwards. And it originally appeared in Mickey Mouse comic in France.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if you see some of the artwork. And again, it's illustrated by Georges Best. Now, Best has done a slightly different art style for this. It's obviously more kind of child-friendly. It's perhaps not as, what's the word I'm looking for? Not as sort of painterly. It's got a bit more of an interesting kind of kid-friendly art style.
So a lot more like solid colors, a lot less like detailed blending and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of sort of when he's doing that watercolor kind of effect.
Like, was it llama? White llama was.
Yeah,
yeah. Which
the white llama.
A lot of that kind of
Yeah, so it's a much kind of more perhaps conventional or expected look.
Oh, it's still so gorgeous. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
And again, lovely, nice, big format. And again, that's still a pretty cheap price point. That's $19.95. So in the UK, that is $14.99. So and it's nice because what Jodorowsky's done is all the way through the story. It focuses on the different sort of senses. So there's a bit all about using your sight and then using sense of smell and things like that. So it's kind of built into the story,
Okay.
So yeah. So if you're a Jodorowsky and a Best fan and you've got, sort of Son of a Gun and all of those kind of things, and you want something for your kids, there you go.
Nice.
Or yourself as well. And that comes out in May, which we're also, I don't know if you know, we're doing, for the first time this year, the Free Comic Book Day. We've got a preview of the Incal coming out for Free Comic Book Day to try
amazing.
Over.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I did see that. I saw also there was a short sale on Cosmicology last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was last week. Yeah, just until Thursday, I think it was. We did just a short one of Jodorowsky stuff, a half price sale.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do those things kind of every now and then. They kind of pop up, so which is cool. Then in June, have you read that yet?
No, I haven't read this yet, but it looks awesome.
It was a kind of big hit from last year. Did really well. In fact, I think in the UK, almost out of stock. So we're going to go to reprint on that one. It's really done fantastically well. What more could you want? Big ass sharks and sort of monsters of all sorts. Well, because that did so well, come June we've got Car2go Adventures, which is the prequel to Car2go. So it talks all about the two main characters in it, which were London Donovan and the Mr. Fersinger, the Carpathian. No, let me get this right. The Centenarian of the Carpathians is his nickname, and it's looking at. I mean, it's got some really lovely artwork. I don't know if I can get that across and show you some of this stuff, but it's
really crisp, actually, like very clean looking.
Well, it's five stories that are told by different creative teams.
Oh, okay.
And they each focus. It's still with the same characters, but it focuses on a different expedition. So what it is it's all based around cryptozoology. So they're going around looking for different monsters, basically, to collect for the main characters' kind of collections. So you've got these lovely different art styles coming through. Let's see, and they focus on things like Bigfoot, dinosaurs in the African jungle. We've got what's the other ones? Giant wolves in Canada. So or is it Alaska? I'm not too sure. It's north of the Arctic Circle anyway. And then we have another adventure set in Alaska. And so it's really looking at kind of big monsters. I guess the closest thing you could describe it is kind of like sort of the X-Files meets I don't know. There's that new film that's just come out. What is it? Legend of the City of Zed or something, which is all about Captain Fawcett exploring in the jungles. So it's very much that kind of like the Lost World kind of exploring of creatures that perhaps don't exist anymore, and discovering that they are, and trying to capture them, really. So it ties in completely. So if you've not read Car2go, you could read this first and then read Car2go, or you can read Car2go and then kind of jump back in time and pick this up. So they work nicely as a companion volumes.
That's awesome. Can't wait.
Then we have Meta Barons Volume 2 in paperback. So that will be out in June as well. So alongside Car2go Adventures. And at the moment, that's all the previews I have here. So coming up for the rest of the year, we've got, as I said, Sanctum Genesis, which is the prequel to Sanctum. And that will be a hardcover coming out in July. And then we've got a paperback of Armies, which was one of the first stories that kind of appeared in Metal Hurlant many years ago. And we did it as a big oversized book originally. And now we're doing it as an affordable paperback size. And it was the inspiration for Pat Mills, who kind of created 2000 AD in the UK. Pat said that he saw that comic many, many years ago, back in the 70s, and that inspired him to create Slain, the character from 2000 AD, who's a big sort of Celtic warrior, so that's his inspiration for that. Then we've got our first real proper kids book coming out by the same guy. I don't know, did you see Bruce Lee when that came out? I know, we bring out so many books, I have to say, I don't blame you if you haven't.
I mean, I still feel like I've seen most of them, but I definitely haven't read all of them, for sure.
No, that's cool. Let's see if I can find it. Difficult. It's not to hand at the moment, I'm afraid, but
that's okay. I'll put a preview. I can edit a preview in there.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. But it's by the same artist, Jay Etienne, and Gregory and the Gargoyles is a really lovely kind of all ages story about a boy who moves to a place opposite a church. And he's got to settling into the new school, and he doesn't really fit in, and he's kind of been left to his own devices. And he starts exploring this church and finds this medallion that throws him back into 17th century France. And he ends up having all these kind of wild, crazy adventures with all these magical creatures and helping them out. And it's about 7 volumes in France, and we're going to be packaging it up as 3 books. Okay. So it'll be a trilogy, and again doing them, relatively cheaply, $10.99. So aimed at sort of trying out the kids market and seeing how it goes. But they're all ages really. Everyone can enjoy them. So they're quite nice and fun.
Awesome. I love all ages books. Honestly, I read quite a few of them. I don't know. They're great. And especially ones that can pull off like entertaining adults and children at the same time,
Yeah, I think those ones. That's the best all ages stuff, isn't it? That works on those 2 layers. Yeah,
definitely.
That's cool. Then we've got Meta Barons Volume 3 in the paperback coming out. So that'll be then. Then September, we've got The Retreat which is a really nice kind of story. I don't know if you've noticed that, like Snow Day, we're doing a few more sort of, I don't know if you call them arty, but less what we're traditionally known for. So perhaps, black and white, a little bit more cartoony, a little bit more like the sort of thing you'd expect perhaps from Drawn and Quarterly or Fantagraphics. We're sort of doing a few of those. It's all stuff that, we published in France, but we're now bringing out to the US, UK market. So the retreat fits into that. It's quite a quiet story, again, like Snow Day. It'll be in black and white, and it's about sort of three friends going away for a weekend and sort of discussing what happened to one of their mutual friends, really. It's a very nice kind of story. And I think that's actually written by the same guy again. I think that's Pierre Wazim. He's quite prolific, so yeah, which is good. And then we've got a Halloween book coming out in time, so in September, which is Halloween Tales, which is a couple of books that originally came out in France under different titles, but by Olivia Boscombe, who he illustrated the John Orowski book, which name escapes me now. About the mime. I
can never pronounce that one. I know Porno.
And it's on the tip of my tongue as well. Bear with me, and I will.
Every time I try to say it, I say it wrong. But I know which one.
Yes. Well, but we should tell the viewers. Otherwise, they'll wonder. And it begins with a P, and it is Pietrolino.
Oh gosh.
I knew I'd remember it.
I don't know why I always think it starts with P-O-R for some reason in my head. Anyway, Pietrolino.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, Pietrolino. Okay. So the same illustrator of Pietrolino is going to be doing this, which is I think it's the story of the Book of Jack. There's a Halloween story, and they're all kind of ghostly, spooky tales. So it's kind of perfect for that time of year, really.
Awesome.
Then we've got October. We've got the final part of the Meta Barons Quartet in paperback, so that'll wrap that up. And then we're doing a non-fiction book. It's something we published in France a while back called, in English we're calling it Deconstructing the Incal. And that is an analysis and looking at the Incal. So all of those kind of weird questions you might have had about what does this mean, who's doing that, who are these characters, what's their backstory, that sort of stuff. All of that is answered in Deconstructing the Incal. And then Deconstructing the Incal?
Sorry, that's where we left off.
Yeah.
What part? I don't know.
Well, Deconstructing the Incal is kind of like, it's the Bible, really. It explains all those kind of unanswered questions that people have. Usually when they've read the Incal, they kind of go, what the hell was that about? And so have their minds completely blown. So this kind of gives you the background information to the characters, the worlds. It's got a lot of insights from both Mobius and Jodorowsky into their creative process. There's kind of sketches and material that's not been seen before, showing the creative process, and lots of stuff from the books. Just kind of giving you, so for any fan of the Incal, it's kind of like the essential reference guide, really. It's going to really dig down deep into, and it's done in an encyclopedic manner, so you go from A to B all the way through. So it's a nice little book, and it's done by a couple of guys who really know the stuff. One of them was the original commissioner of the sort of Gardens of Edina, or the World of Edina, Mobius's book in French. So they knew the guys well. So that comes out in October.
Cool.
It's the essential companion to the trilogy. Then we've got Adrift coming out in November, and Adrift fits in a little bit like Snow Day and The Retreat. It's a little black and white, small paperback book, only £12.99, so I think that's about $15, $16, something like that, $17. And it's looking at the person creating it's grandfather and his experiences after World War II, joining up into the French Navy and travelling around the world and having these kind of exciting adventures in the Navy. But it's also examining how sort of people's own experiences or our sort of prior generations' experiences can have an influence on our own experiences of life, and how intergenerational changes occur and influences on each other. Then in the US only, we're doing 1,000 Faces trade paperback. So we did the hardcover, I think, last year, illustrated by... Oh, his name escapes me again. Hang on a second. Here we go. Mark Mallis. So that's the hardcover that came out with a nice full coat cover.
I like that cover.
Yeah, and so that will be coming out as a paperback in November of this year, but not in the UK, only in the US. And then we've got Orion's Outcasts, which is another science fiction story that sort of fits in the Julia Valanga universe. So it's part of the retro world kind of universe that she created. Right. It's set in that same universe on a different planet, but still related around that sort of time and space. And it's about people who are sort of abandoned on this planet, and they're branded and they're considered outcasts. And it's a sort of big adventure story, really, about one of these outcasts trying to escape off of the planet and meet someone from Earth, which is this now mythical planet that people only talk about. And that's it for the year. So come December, we're taking a break. We're not releasing anything. But that's mostly because everyone's kind of done their Christmas shopping by December. So, yeah, not much need for to bring out stuff. So we're going to take a break. And, you know, that's, for us, normally we release about 24 to 26 books a year. And we've got 26 coming out this year. So it's a lot, you know, so it's difficult for people to keep up. So we're giving everyone a chance to have a breather, you know, in December.
No, that makes total sense. Yeah, no, that's exciting though. I didn't realize that it was 26, that you did actually put out that many in 1 year. So that's kind of interesting.
On average, it's about 2 a month.
Okay.
I mean, it varies. Sometimes it will be 3 if there's like a paperback edition of something,
right, and
we've snuck that in. But, you know, on average, it's rare for us to do 1 book in a month. We'll tend to do 2, really. So, yeah. But, you know, again, our thing is we tend to do smaller print runs. We don't do really massive long print runs. So very much, if you don't grab it when it kind of comes out, then it's unlikely you're going to get it in that format again, you know. Right. Well,
yeah, exactly. Which I think is why, well, me and so many other people I know are like, oh, I have to pre-order it or whatever off Amazon. Unfortunately, where I live in Canada, not a lot of people will get Humanoids books in. I think we have one store that always gets them. Mm-hmm. My regular shop always gets Strange Adventures, always gets the Humanoids releases, but they don't always. The other shops don't always have them, and this is because we, I think, are at the very end of Canada. We're like the last to get everything, but we don't usually get the soft covered releases. We usually only get the hard covered ones here.
Okay.
I've only been able to purchase one soft covered Humanoids release, and it's from a while ago.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, they are. I mean, predominantly we did them a lot for the. Oh, okay, yeah. That one, yeah.
It's the only one.
Well, that's interesting because I mean, it's only been in about the last year or so that we've had a real concerted effort to do that, and that was because we started branching out into the book trade, and you know, so the bookshops have been asking for paperback editions. because it's a very different market. So really, the hardcovers tend to be for the, for the specialist trade and for the die-hard, sort of
collectors.
Yeah. And the paperbacks, but technically speaking, they should all be available to the comic shops as well. So it's really up to them which versions they order in.
Right. And I think, for the most part around here, they're probably just going to go for the hardcover anyway, I would assume. But, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I like the hardcover, so, I just end up grabbing whatever I can get my hands on because, like I said, it can be difficult to buy comics locally here. Especially if you're already a collector who has so much already. You're like, it's difficult to find those specialized items. So I do end up going online a lot. And at least online through Amazon, we can pre-order Humanoids books very easily.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on here today and chatting with me.
No problem. No, that's all good. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Awesome. I think in the future, I know some of my viewers had questions about humanoids, and I was wondering if it would be okay if we maybe set something up in the future time for them to give me those questions that I can ask you on their behalf.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's totally fine. Yeah,
I could always send them to you ahead of time so you're prepared.
Let's bring any nasty surprises. Yeah,
exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving up some of your Sunday, and I hope you have an excellent end of the weekend.
No problem. And you. Thanks. Bye.